We're talking stolen bases. We're talking figuring out some category management in the second half of drafts. All tonight on the Rotowire Fantasy Baseball Podcast. Coming up next. Happy Sunday evening, everybody. Welcome to the Rotowire Fantasy Baseball Podcast, sponsored by WynnBET. I am Scott Jenstad, joined as always on Sunday nights by Jeff Erickson. Coming at you a little bit earlier this Sunday. It's actually a light out, so our lighting might look a little bit different, but Jeff's got to go run around and play soccer games. We decided we'd jump on a little bit earlier. No Fab this week, obviously, so it's a good time. Jeff, how's your weekend been?
Pretty good, although I'm confused. There's no spring training. There's no football. My golfer sucked this weekend, so I mean it was weird. NASCAR it was on, and I tweeted this out: real life victory laps are better than Twitter victory laps. But it's okay, it's fine. But you know what? I'm hoping that this is the quiet before the storm.
So I was going to ask you. It seemed like I've been pretty pessimistic, but it seems like the fact that owners and players are like, there's owners flying in, there's players flying in, there's something that I meet every day this week. You and I talked last week about like the big crush was going to be the first week of March. I think we are right about that. Maybe it's just a little bit off on the dates. It looks like February 28th is kind of the drop dead date for now to have a full season. I think that can get pushed back to March, 3rd, 4th, 5th. They're making ground. But this week feels like the biggest week yet if we're going to get a full scale season.
On one hand, we do finally have like meetings scheduled all week, right? That's supposed to be pretty good. On the other hand, the offers haven't been remotely close to each other. And the owners haven't moved a bit. I want to make sure that the onus is there. As much as, I don't want to both sides this. I think that's my point of emphasis, is that this is the owner's lockout. I read a really good article today by RJ Anderson on CBS discussing like the nuances of the CBT, that, it's not just that they're not moving on the amounts, the thresholds, but they're also severely taxing it a lot more than the taxes, the penalties for going over the competitive balance tax, as they now call the luxury tax,
right,
are a lot more punitive. We're talking, it used to be 20%. They want to make it like 75%. It's a lot higher pain threshold here. And only 6 teams have ever gone above it in the first place. So it already kind of served as a salary cap. Now they're really trying to make it a hard salary cap instead of a soft cap. And meanwhile, revenues have far outpaced, the growth of the competitive balance tax. Travis Sawchuk did a really good tweet thread on this, which RJ actually quoted in the article. I tweeted out the article. Highly recommend people reading it. You get a better idea of where, at least on one issue, where everyone stands. This is not a both sides issue.
Yeah, I think I agree. The interesting thing that came out this week was the players saying, essentially, if we don't get this, full pay, full season, we're not going for expanded playoffs, which is a huge thing for the playoffs. So for the owners. I mean, that's their money comes in the playoffs. They want another round of playoffs. That's been very clear. Like the last 3 years, they did that in the COVID season and all that. It's very clear that's very important to them. It's interesting to see how much of that players, I don't know if we call it threat or, negotiation tactic, how much of that plays in, because I know the owners want that expanded playoffs.
Yeah, of course. They do. And in fact, that's the expansion of revenue that we're talking about. Yeah. And, they want to go up to 14 teams, which again, and here's the other thing. It's a major issue too for the players, because more teams make the playoffs. There's actually less incentive to spend.
Yep.
Because at least on the middle, you have a much
better
chance
in the back end and see what happens, right?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. It's it'll be interesting. I think this week will tell us a lot. I think that if we're talking next week and there's been no ground made up, I think that we're in a pretty bad place. But hopefully with the stress of trying to get this thing done, we might actually get some movement. But let's hope there is. We actually had a little piece of news this week. Josh Jung had an injury. It's a labral injury in his shoulder. Sounds like he's going to be, just kind of shelved for a while. Then who knows what happens. I'm going to try and, do it without surgery. But that's just kind of thing that, with a hitter, a shoulder, a guy who, needed to kind of have a spring to get in the lineup kind of thing. Anyway, I'm kind of just off that fully in a redraft league.
Yeah. The thing is too, I heard, that's awful. If it's a shortened season, he's already up against it a little bit, as is every prospect. By the way, I believe it's Josh Young. Listening to Clay and James,
I messed up a name.
podcast.
I messed up a name in the first 3 minutes. That's pretty good.
I was calling it Jung all along until I heard Clay and James talk about Josh Young, and I keep on want to say Jung or Jung. I want to put my own spin on it there, but
Right.
I think it is Young. And correct us if the correction is wrong. Liz likes to chastise me when I correct him, but then I'm actually incorrect. So yes, Heather does that to me all the time. It's probably true. I probably do it all the time too. So just a heads up on that. But that's big. And honestly, that's really bad news if you have Seager, if you have Semyon, Nathaniel Lowe. I want that lineup to be better, and it's better with productive Josh Young. Isaiah Kiner-Falefa gets more run, I would guess, at third base as a result of this,
which is not a good thing for a real world baseball lineup.
No, but maybe I think you would want him being pushed back to catcher, if anything. But although I don't, because I have Jonah Heim in a couple of places already in some draft and holds.
I think Jonah Heim might be a better hitter right now anyway, but
perhaps.
It's weird. You look at the lineup, you're like, oh, they added all this money with Semyon and Seager, and they still look at it, you're like, oh, Semyon, Seager, and then kind of what else we got? Obviously, we got Adolis Garcia. A lot depends on the Calhouns if they can stay healthy. I suppose we're kind of waiting for Willie Calhoun to.
I think he's a singular Calhoun. I don't think there's anybody else to wait for. Unfortunately,
is Cole gone?
Oh, gosh, darn it! Correct the corrector. All right.
Nice.
I thought you were only saying waiting on Willie because we've always been waiting on Willie, but
no, I meant Calhoun's, both of them, because that's
they do have Cole also. You are correct, sir. Ironically, we're going to be talking stolen bases tonight, and Kiner-Falefa did steal 20 last year, and he is cheap, but for a reason. He's bad.
So that's a good segue. Let's jump into stolen base. We're talking about the stolen base market kind of in the first half here. In the second half, we're going to talk about some kind of draft strategy, category management, guys that you can draft after pick 200. Say if you're, struggling in stolen bases, or you realize you're a little bit behind in average or behind in wins or whip or whatever it may be. We're going to kind of highlight a couple players in each category to get you going there. But let's talk about steals first. Steals have been a big topic in the early drafts. They, everybody's like, you got to get your steals in the first 3 or 4 rounds. There's a lot of talk about Vlad Guerrero Jr. He's a first round pick, but everybody kind of pushing it back a little bit because can you start the draft with no steals? Can you take Freddie Freeman in the second round, Rafael Devers in the second round, get no stolen bases out of your one of your picks there? If you have Trey Turner or someone like that, sure, then you could do it. But there's a lot of strategy built in there with some really good players, but don't steal bases. They're getting pushed back. But you look at stolen bases, and I looked at you wrote a really good article on the targets you need in each category in the main event, TGFBI, the online championship. Looking at stolen bases, it looks like last year the 80th percentile, and I kind of use that as a spot, like you want to be at the 80th percentile everywhere. You're going to compete overall if you do that. Last year you needed 121 stolen bases. 2019, so jumping back, obviously skipping 2020 with the short season, was 125. And you, as we're getting on air, you point out to me, 2018 was 137 stolen bases. So it's really dropped off from 2018 to 2019. We had happy fun ball. Everybody's hitting home runs. Everybody's striking out. Obviously, a lot less stolen bases with that. The online championship target last year was 127 at the 80th percentile. So it's the numbers dropped, but as I look at these players, it's a puzzle to get there, even with the drop number.
Yeah, it is, and both things are true. You need less of a number, but you also need to. You also, it's harder to find those just to get to that number. To me, it's remarkable that in 3 years we saw that big of a drop, Scott.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's
16 stolen bases is just wild to me that we saw that big of a drop. And then it's similar on the online, the 12-team online championship. We went in 2018 and we needed 145 to get to our 80th percentile. Now it's down to 127, 18, drop of 18. Same with the 70th percentile. It's the same thing. 70th percentile is usually good to cash in your league. If you average 70th percentile in every category, that's why I list that there. 50th is there kind of as a benchmark. If you were going to give up one category, you still need to get about half. And any game that's got an overall contest, you can't do really worse than that.
Yeah, if you're in a standalone, and punting steals is something you want to do, that clearly is a strategy you can do. You got to be perfect, or really, really good everywhere else. But we're talking about online championship, main event. There is an overall component. If you throw up a 0 at stolen bases, it can be done. Like someone a couple years ago won the main event with only like 40 saves, but I mean, they were literally like 96th percentile in a bunch of other categories. So it's a really tough mountain to climb. It's hard to be perfect everywhere else in a 15-teamer. Like you said, I think you at least want to get to 50 percentile in stolen bases if you're going to be able to hang in there overall and do really well everywhere else.
Yeah, that's right. And, the thing is, we've talked about this in the context of this year of Vlad's like the hot button guy. Mike Trout's been that guy, though, too. We've been talking about that. We've talked about Arenado in the past. And it's harder now. And there's a great increased emphasis on getting your aces. So if you don't get stolen bases early, and you go Vlad, if you go Vlad in the first round, you go Mike Trout in the first round, you're getting 1 to 3 stolen bases there.
Yep.
You're either giving up an ace in the second round or you're giving up speed in the second round. And then you're but if you're in your home league, it doesn't matter. It's fine. I mean, it does matter to the extent that you don't want to give up the category completely, but there's no overall contest.
Yeah.
It's totally fine. And I think we got to remember that not everybody that listens to us is an NFBC player. I love the NFBC. You guys know that. But there's a greater audience out there. Points leagues, head-to-head leagues, for crying out loud. They're like, whatever. You guys are wasting my time.
I'm going to ask you that question then. I know that a lot of people play points leagues and head-to-head. Is this the kind of year where you just wouldn't even think about stolen base then? If you're a standalone, would you punt? If you're in a points league, would you just not? I mean, points league, you don't have to worry about it normally anyway. Just trying to get as many points as you can. But it depends on your scoring, obviously. The cut line the NFBC runs as a points contest, and kind of they try to skew the scoring so batting average and stolen bases still kind of matter. If you're in a regular points league, you don't need stolen bases because it doesn't matter. If you're head-to-head, it does matter because that's a category every week. So it's would you, if you're a standalone Roto league, are you thinking like, I'm just not going to worry about it this year and see where it figures out? I mean, it's just it's a tough year if you don't get it.
I do it this way. I would say, I mean, you do your work ahead of time, get your rankings. If you're in an auction league, get your dollar value set and be ready to pivot.
Yeah.
Something is usually going to be emphasized. Something is usually going to be de-emphasized. Just take advantage of that. Easier said than done.
I think we might see the moment. Main events. I think we might see some main events where Vlad gets to, pick 10, pick 11, pick 12. And if you're down at the end of the draft, you got to figure out if he slips and everybody's panicking about getting a pitcher or stolen bases, are you willing to do it? Can you figure out a path to do it? Have you thought about, who would be your second, third, fourth round pick? I think you've got to be able to be ready to adapt to that because there are going to be some leagues with some of these, the Trout and Vlad guys are going to slip a little bit because people are worried about that.
We're going to get getting Vlad at like pick 17. Because that's what he does. Yeah. He's going to get some Vlad devil magic going for us there. Vlad Sedler we're talking about here, getting Vlad Guerrero Jr. Sure. The thing is, there's a path. And if you, just like anything else, and let's remember, we're getting something great. In fact, I'm drafting 10th on Tuesday night in the mixed labor draft. There's a plausible scenario there where I'm getting Vlad Guerrero Jr. at 10. After all that talk I've had with Fred or anybody else, and I don't like that build, but it's doable. It just means that I have to either give up a starting pitcher, a closer, or a speed guy with one of my next picks that that I would have otherwise gotten. I'm going to have to figure out which is easier to catch up on. Is it easier to find saves late? We've had, plenty of talk about that, about trying how bad it is finding closers right now with especially with the lack of news. Probably going to be the starting pitching. That is what you give up, or at least early starting pitching is what you give up. You have to make it up in volume later.
So I want to talk about stolen bases in terms of like if you do, if you get one guy or don't get enough going on. I don't want to talk about early speed because we know all the good players that are top. Of the 15 players that have 20 or more stolen bases projected by, I just use Steamer, 10 of those go in the first 4 rounds. So the main, 67% of those guys are early round. Mm-hmm. There's 2 guys that are right after that. Jazz Chisholm's 73rd overall ADP. Tommy Edman is 81. And then you get some guys. There's 3 guys with projected over 20 steals who are in the hundreds. You have Miles Straw at 114. Akil Baddoo at 148 and Raimel Tapia at 262. So I want to talk about if you are low after those first 5 rounds, or if you maybe have one guy you need some more. What we're doing, in rounds 6 through 10, if you need some stolen bases. Do you like Tommy Edman? Jonathan India is on the Reds. He had 12 stolen bases last year. We'll talk about Miles Straw in a second. But between the guys like 80 to 100 here, we have Tommy Edman, Jorge Polanco, Jonathan India, Bobby Witt Jr. We talked about Dalton Varsho a little bit last week. Is there one of these guys that you really like if you need some steals that you're grabbing in the 5th or 6th round and kind of just getting it done right there?
Well, I like Tommy Edman Jr. Or at least I did like Tommy Edman Jr. until I talked to John Legeza and listened to him on his, on his pod where he was doing kind of the counterpoint to us, believe it or not. But he made a pretty good case against Edman, and he's not the only person that's made that. I like Edman as a player. I liked him better. Well, he still has second, third, and outfield eligibility, if I'm not mistaken. But there's a pretty strong case that he may not keep that forever, but like top of the lineup especially. And if he's hitting towards the bottom part of the lineup, he might not run as frequently. I have wanted to get him. I did get him in a couple of drafts where I waited. Like I think the league where I got Vlad in the NFBC 50, the 12-teamer, I think I did get Edman as one of my reactions. I got Edman and Miles Straw because I really wanted to be the subject of every Twitter argument about speed, but I kind of still like Edman. Jorge Polanco is right there. I like better as a hitter. Edman's probably got a higher stolen base upside. Polanco's got a better hitter upside.
Yeah, for sure.
I don't like Dalton Varsho for the price. I will not draft him at that price.
Where are you on Bobby Witt Jr. right now? Obviously, we don't fully know if he's going to be opening day, if he's going to be 3 weeks after. Where do you fall on that at the price? His ADP, and for ADP, just a general use, I'm using Draft Champions drafts over the last month. I didn't want to just use all the drafts. I don't want cut line in there because obviously the scoring is a little bit different than Roto. Where are you on Witt Jr. at 90? That's the 6-7 turn in a 15-teamer.
I think that's a little high, but I'm not that far below that. Where the one league I got him. I got him where did I get him? I got him in the speakers draft, the first pitch Arizona speakers draft, and I got him at 8.4 in a 15-teamer. So that's like 109, I want to say. I think that's a bad. Well, obviously I drafted him. I think it's a good price.
Yeah.
If I didn't, then I'd be like acting against interest, which would be really weird. It was after.
Obviously, I will never get there in any of these overall contests because somebody will want the sexy pick. You're the Reds guy, Jonathan India. He was not a big steals guy in the minors. Looked like he had about 11 in 2019. He had 12 last year.
Mm-hmm.
He only got caught 3 times, so it was 80% efficiency right there. Do you think 12 is kind of what we're looking at? Do you think there's a little bit of upside with his stolen bases? Where do you think his number? If you had to project a number, where does he fall in?
I have my projections up where I sorted by. I've got him for 14.
Okay, so right in that range.
Yeah, I think that's in range. I think he's kind of what you see is what you get. I don't know if there's another level left in him, if that makes sense.
The nice thing with him, though, is we talk about these guys. You talk about Tommy Edman had 11 home runs last year. Jonathan India had 21. So you're not getting anything empty anywhere else. Obviously he's someone that's growing and getting better, and he should be leading off for the Reds. And you got Winker, Votto, and Suarez behind him. Should score a lot of runs.
Mm-hmm.
As we're getting in this range, we're not talking about guys after 300. I really like to get someone that doesn't leave me empty elsewhere, which is always a little bit concerned with Edman. He did have 11 home runs, but hard hit rate was about 35%. Doesn't walk. That maybe hurts the stolen base a little bit. And I just worry a little bit with Edman that he had 2 stolen bases in 2020 in 55 games. Obviously, he had 30 last year, but it's just I look at that, I just worry a little bit. It's everything has to be perfect for him to run.
True. And you hate seeing that. And the guys that go from like 20 to 0, you're like, what happened? Ahmed Rosario was another guy that's like that, and then he came back a little bit last year on that though.
You probably figure there's some sort of like ankle or hamstring tweak in there at some point that they're able to play but not able to run it out, right?
Well, and he had that whole I wasn't able to get on base problem too, and that seems like that would be a good reason not to run. So I think that's something you watch for a little bit. I wish Edman walked a little bit more.
Yeah. You always like that 12% walk rate just to kind of steal some stolen base opportunities, which is hard to get when you walk 5% of the time.
Yeah. The thing is, and that's one thing, you comparing him versus Straw. Straw does walk.
Let's jump into Straw then. Are we kind of
sure? Let's make the straw man argument.
Yeah, I knew that was coming.
Yeah, I know. I had to get that's like center square. I mean,
he was like the talk of January on Twitter, so I don't get too much deep into Straw. But his ADP is 114. There's a lot of talk. If you miss steals early, just get Miles Straw. Well, only one team can do that. And it's funny. John, you mentioned John. With his podcast, he said something to me at the fact that I can't believe people comparing him to the lineup of Shields. To which I pointed out, their first 3 seasons look pretty much exactly the same.
And he acknowledged that.
He did. He did acknowledge it, and he's had some counterpoints on me, so I had to have one on him. But he acknowledged it. It was a good conversation back and forth. It was very, we had a good discussion on it. The thing with Straw, isn't it? The point that James Anderson's made on the Rotowire podcast is that he's a really good defender. Cleveland has nobody else. He's going to be leading off, so that kind of buys in some playing time. But when you get someone who just really can't hit very well, there's always the risk of them going into a crazy slump for 4 to 6 weeks, and you just can't put a guy up there anymore. I mean, his hard hit rate was 26%. He's a 1% barrel rate guy. He can't hit. There's no doubt about that. His K rate's okay. He's like a 19%. But the one nice thing is the walks. The walks are a point that do kind of work for him. 10.5% walk rate puts him on base a bunch. But so that helps his OBP. If he was a 349 OBP guy last year, if he could do that, I think he sticks in the lineup with the defense. But just with someone who can't hit, there's always the risk that that gets exposed a little bit. Maybe he moves down the lineup or maybe starts platooning, and that's always the concern with someone who isn't really much of a hitter.
Yeah, and the nobody else argument doesn't usually carry as much water as you think it does.
Right.
Guys get moved to positions. George Valera's hanging out in Double-A. What if he goes nuclear right away in the minor leagues? They might call him up pretty quickly. There's always somebody. Miles Straw was not in Cleveland last year. He's not an Indian now. He was an Indian last year, but point is he wasn't part of that team's plan. And all it takes is a little trade, a little claim. Guys will get added to the mix if need be, and especially in outfield. That's one area where teams can find a player. It's harder to find outfielders in real life now than it used to be. It seems like, it's harder for us in fantasy because the way teams manage their rosters, that they're carrying 14 pitchers on the roster now, something crazy like that, 13, 14 pitchers on the roster. But that said, I think Straw has good on base skills, and maybe teams just start challenging him a little bit more, and that dissipates. But he's like, okay, he's E6 Snead. Let's just throw strikes. They between Straw, Mercado, and Zimmer, I mean, those are their projected starters right now. I feel pretty good about Straw getting playing time, and we're going to talk Zimmer later because I like him too. But I do think that there's a pretty good chance Straw cashes in a decent amount. I don't think this is Leody Taveras 2.0 or DeShields 2.0. I think he's better than that.
Yeah. Taveras is a good example because he was the guy last year that we were taking a little bit later than this, but 8th, 9th, 10th round, and he obviously did not work out. Talk to me about Trent Grisham in San Diego. He had a really good 2020. Last year was a little disappointing. He only hit 242, 15 home runs, 13 stolen bases, 527 plate appearances. Did drop the strikeout rate a little bit. Hard hit rate fell off, though. I liked him last year as a guy at the top of the lineup who ran, but also hit the ball hard. He was 41% in 2020, dropped to 36%. Barrel rate dropped in half down to 5.2%. So this is a guy that last year, when I was drafting him, I thought was a really good hitter in addition to the stolen base upside. Had 5 caught stealings, which is not really great with the 13 stolen bases. Should lead off to start, but the Padres have shown, against lefties, they will either move him down the lineup, they will bench him, which always worries you a little bit when you're buying someone from stolen base. You want them in top of the lineup as much as possible to get on base and steal in that first inning. Where are you on Grisham? His ADP is about 128. Where are you on Grisham coming into 2021?
I've had him a couple times. I think I've drafted him at least once. I know I grabbed him in XFL as well, which was an auction league. I do think there's a little bit of last year's bum potential here because I don't think too much has changed with what he's capable of doing. We do have a new manager. I don't know how much does Melvin let him run. I mean, he let Starling Marte run
every single time imaginable, which is I thought it was gonna be he'd let him run when he could, but Marte literally ran every time he was on last year. It was crazy.
Do you think that they knew that Marte was on this contract push and they're like, go ahead? We're going to be, especially as the team was starting to slip a little bit, they're like, go ahead. I mean, granted, he hit like crazy, so he was on base all the time too.
And he never got caught stealing, which was key too. I think his first 20 were successful. So we knew.
Is that good?
Yeah. When you're stealing successfully and go as much as you want, nobody's going to stop you at that point. If you get caught 4 times in a row, then maybe we have a talk, in the office after the game, maybe you should pick your spots a little better. So I think it was a combination of, them, the A's kind of falling out of it, Marte playing for a contract, Marte on base all the time, like you said, but also just stealing successfully every time. I think just kind of a convergence of everything. But if Grisham could be high efficiency, I think Melvin lets him run. If he runs at, what was he last year, 13 of 18? If he runs at that pace, I think he makes him, has him kind of pick his spots a little better than just go.
The Padres ran a lot last year. Tatis had 25 bags. Pham had 14. Machado had 12. Grisham had 13. Profar had 10. Myers had 8. This is a team that they for better or worse, they ran last year.
Yep.
I wonder if that changes at all. And that's one of the things you got to, is their team like, are they going to let, I'm sure they're not going to tell, well, they might tell Tatis not to run just because of his shoulder, but that didn't happen last year. We'll see. Can we
just teach him to slide feet first? Like, they can't be that hard.
Adalberto Mondesi differs.
For sure. That was when we talked about him, that was always a thing. He had a hurt shoulder and he didn't really know how to slide feet first very well. And it ended up mattering. It's a tough thing. And with Tatis, he's your best player. He might be the best player in baseball. That last thing you want him doing is hurting his shoulder, stealing second base in a game where that base really doesn't matter at that point in time.
For sure.
One more guy here in the top 150 I want to ask you before we get a little deeper. Chris Taylor in L.A. Really good year in 2021, 20 home runs, 13 stolen bases. His first double-digit stolen base season since 2017 with that big year with the Mariners. Hard hit rate was kind of back to usual, 38%, good barrel rate. I'm a little bit worried on Taylor in terms of I don't like the jump in the strikeout rate. He was at 28.5% strikeout guy last year. I was a little surprised when I looked a little closer at Taylor. I'm a little worried there's some batting average downside here.
There is. I think that there's playing time's not really a concern of mine, especially after they've lost some key players. And Muncie's not going to be ready for I don't think Muncie's going to be ready for the start of the season.
I don't think so either.
Depending on when the season starts, of course. But I think Chris Taylor is going to get pretty regular playing time. I kind of think the stolen base upside, I think 13 was actually probably high. He was 13 of 14 last year.
Yep.
I think Chris Taylor probably gets 8 to 11. I think I got him projected for 11. So I should probably say he makes 11. 11, he's 10 to 12. That's what I'll say he does this year. But it might be a slight come down. I agree that the K rate, the jump in the Ks is concerning. But then again, he had this huge spike in Ks in 2018 and then was able to kind of correct that. We had 178 Ks in 2018. So I think it was a little bit of a sellout for power year. He hit 20 home runs. He was a contract guy year. Also. I think that matters. He wanted to put up numbers, and I think he'll be good. I just worry that I don't know. We're getting that 288 from 2017. I misspoke. That year was actually with the Dodgers too. That he had the big year. I was in Seattle, but that was before that. I think you're looking at. I think I'd set my batting average projecting him like 245 to 255 rather than the higher numbers we had in 2019 and 2020. It's interesting. I think the Dodgers are compared to the Mariners, like, go ahead and strike out some. It's worth it to have the trade-off in the power. Didn't show any of that power at the Mariners. Just wild. He had one home
total. It's crazy.
Yeah. In fact, he had no homers as a Mariner.
That one in 2016 was after he left, huh?
Yeah. I just looked at the partials on that one there. I was with the Dodgers in 2016. And then 2017, the ball got livelier, and so did his bat.
Yeah, so he's a guy that's a little bit more fully priced this year. Pick 135. That's the 9-10 turn in a 15-teamer just after the first break in a 12-teamer. So you're paying for the production. I think I'm probably out at that price this year.
Yeah, I think so too. And I even though playing time's guaranteed, I don't expect a spike in playing time. He had 582 plate appearances last year.
Yeah, they had a lot of stuff. They had a lot of stuff go wrong in regular season lineup last year. That he definitely got the full playing time. So let's jump into the later rounds. Rounds 10 to 20 and after that. But first, a note from our sponsors at WynnBET. WynnBET is now the exclusive sponsor for Rotowire's fantasy podcast. WynnBET brings you the latest action with a user-friendly interface, moneyline bets, boosted parlays, over/unders, round robins, live betting, and so much more all at your fingertips. Want a break from sports betting? Head into WynnBET's digital casino and take a spin on roulette, double down on blackjack, slam the slots, or try your hand at baccarat. WynnBET is currently available in 9 states now: Arizona, Colorado, Indiana, Louisiana, Michigan, New Jersey, New York, Tennessee, and Virginia, all while rapidly expanding. At WynnBET, the possibilities are limitless. Register for WynnBET today. Make a qualifying deposit and wager up to receive $200 in free bets. Promotion may vary by state. Download WynnBET now. That's WYNNBET. WynnBET, the exclusive partner for Rotowire's fantasy podcasts. So, Jeff, if you get to the first break and you've gone 10 rounds and you're like, I got a few steals here and there, but I certainly need to bulk that up a little bit. In the first half, rounds 10 to 15, Colton Wong was the first guy that I looked at. 2021 was really good for him. 14 home runs, 12 stolen bases. He had some injuries, only had 492 plate appearances. Should he lead off in Milwaukee again, which is a good spot for scoring some runs, depending on how Christian Yelich is this year. But the nice thing with Wong is you're getting a guy who steals a few bags, but also helps you in batting average. 265 or higher the last 3 years. Strikeout rate was up a little bit, but still pretty good at 17%. OBP was not great last year, 335. So you hope that bumps up a little bit if you want to keep him at the leadoff spot. But Wong feels like someone to me that you're going to get stats in 4 categories, which is really nice at the price.
Yeah, I'd say 3.5. I mean, you're not going to get RBI.
No, I was taking that one out. You're right on the power. 14. You're right. That's
14 in a 492 plate appearances. I mean, he'll get a little bit more playing time this year. One good thing about the Brewers, and Clay Link pointed this out, is their playing time's pretty well set.
Yeah.
But he tends to get hurt a lot anyhow. And I think he sometimes tends to get platooned. So I think that cuts into, I think there's not much of an upside beyond what he did last year in terms of the power. In fact, I would bet on the downside. I think he gets less than 14, which means maybe he gets fewer stolen base attempts too. I've got him at 16 stolen bases. It's still pretty decent.
That's a pretty
he
good
used
number.
To be like pick 250, 300. Now you're paying.
You are paying the
price 200 price for him, which it's worth it. Again, just realize that the trade-offs are there. And for a guy that doesn't hit for power, you would kind of a leadoff guy. You would kind of think he's going to get like 90 to 100 runs. He had 70 last year. He's not a huge runs guy either. As
we get into these guys, I think you're going to realize that finding stolen bases, everything has a trade-off at this point. I mean, everything after round 10, there is a trade-off. And you're looking at good names there. You look at names that are around these people. Like there are good starters in there. There are good power bats in here. And if you have to get steals, you got to do it. But it can be painful at times.
Yep.
A guy that got a little buzz on Twitter and online this year is O'Neal Cruz in Pittsburgh. He is slated to start at shortstop for the Pirates. Obviously, we got 9 million situations going on, but I think we're pretty safe to say the Pirates aren't bringing any high-name free agents. Roster Resource has him hitting 6th. In Double-A in 2021, he hit 282, 12 home runs, 18 stolen bases, and only 273 plate appearances. A really good stolen base number for only 273 plate appearances. In 2019, across A and Double-A, he played 70 games, had 11 steals in that season. Does strike out a bunch, and you worry about that. He struck out 23.5% in Double-A in 2021. We see a lot of guys that first run through the majors, that K rate spikes up pretty quickly. If he's striking out 28% of the time, he's not going to get to the top of the lineup. It's hard to get on base. His ADP at the moment is 207. How do you feel about O'Neal Cruz?
I feel like he's more of a batting average risk than he's getting drafted because of the K rate that you mentioned. He's a strange player. 6'7" shortstop. You just don't see that very often.
6'7". Jeez, you're right.
Yeah.
6'7", 210. That's a big dude.
Yeah, big dude, but 6'7", and he's only 210. It's weird. He's kind of lanky. I think our Outlook even calls him lanky. I wonder.
It's like a Brandon Ingram body playing shortstop. That's wild.
He only played like 6 games at AAA last year. Yeah. I almost wonder if he spent some time there and isn't installed at shortstop right away. Instilled would be like values and stuff, but installed at shortstop. He may have values that needs to be instilled too. Who knows? I think that I probably pumping the brakes at that price. and keep in mind, I think there's a whole Pirates malaise thing that does affect players there. It was especially acute in 2020, obviously, with, even brought down Brian Reynolds, but who at least he bounced back last year. But I don't think the counting stats are going to be that great with him because the lineup around him is not great. I think they've got a core with Reynolds, Cruz, and Brian Hayes that could be decent. The rest of that lineup around him is just so awful. Even the Rangers are like, okay, yeah, we may be crazy for going and spending on Seager and Semien, but look at that lineup around them. It's awful. Just awful.
It's rough. And they do have Cole Tucker that they could kind of throw at shortstop for a month if they wanted to kind of give Cruz a month of at bats at AAA. And Cole Tucker would be good for their social media.
Newman could play there. I mean, Hoyt Park could play there. You never know.
Cole Tucker's dating Vanessa Hudgens. It's pretty impressive for a backup shortstop.
I am impressed. Am I impressed or depressed that you know that? Impressed.
You're not surprised that I know that for sure.
I'm depressed that I know who she is, but that's not even fair. I mean, come on, I have kids. High School Musical was awesome.
Yeah, pretty darn well known. Yeah.
Yeah.
But no, it's funny because they're all over social media just because he's dating her. Let's jump out a little bit and talk about a couple of Rockies. Rockies are always hard to figure out, playing time, all that kind of stuff. We've got Raimel Tapia, who is actually projected for 20 stolen bases in Steamer. He's the lowest guy. He's at ADP 262, lowest guy that is 20 steals or more on their projections. has the chance to lead off a bunch for Colorado. Last year, he had 20 stolen bases and 533 plate appearances. He was a big stolen base guy in the minors, too. He had 33 in 2014, 26 in 2015, 26 in 2016. So has a history of running a bunch. They had the 20 last year. Nice strikeout rate drop last year. He had a good bump there. He was down to 13%. His career was over 18%. He was over 20% every season prior to 2020. Dropped it a little bit and then really dropped it far off last year. So the contact is a good thing. Not a lot of hard contacts. A 31.5% hard contact guy, 2.1% barrel. So we're not going to get a lot of pop out of him. And he had 6 home runs last year. But I don't know. Give me someone leading off in Colorado for 81 games and a little bit of running. At Colorado, we've seen helps the average more than it helps the home run. So if he can get on base a bunch, got to like his chances to at least run. And Colorado really has no reason not to let him go, give him a green light at least.
Yeah, it's true. And he really does reliably bat leadoff 81 times against righties last year, 18 even against lefties. Yeah, I mean, I never seem to have him. And again, you've pressed the point that it's really hard to find stolen bases late. You're going to have some sacrifices. It's another guy who you would think he'd score more. If he's batting leadoff as frequently as he did, he scored 69 runs last year. That's not nice. That's, it's really, and it's the lineup around him's terrible. It's worse than it was last year, presuming Trevor Story ends up elsewhere, which I think we're all presuming. I think that, and again, you are really giving up power here.
Yep.
So this is a 2.5 category, 2 3/4 category player.
Yep.
Again, I'd rather we kind of skip by Robbie Grossman. Give me Robbie Grossman at 175 than over Tapia at this price. If I'm trying to go get you could get 2020 from Grossman, and you did get 2020 at least last year, which is kind of the most under the radar 2020 I think I saw last year. So something to think about at least. I don't think he may not repeat that, but he might go 15-15. I don't want to have to Tapia, but it's better than Garrett Hampson. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, Grossman was that was a wild year. I mean, that was just a situation where he, found himself in Detroit and it kind of had a green light and he went 23-20. And I don't know where that was in Oakland. He had played 138 games in 2019. He went 6-9. So I don't know what happened between Oakland and Detroit aside from a green light. He sold out for a little power. The high strikeout rate went up. Hard hit rate went up a little bit, but I am not buying Ronald Grossman at the price. I think that was you're paying for a year that we're never going to see again from Grossman. I don't think we'll see. If I had to guess on him, I'd say you get more like 15-10 this year.
Fair. That's fair. I did get Grossman in the same speakers draft. I didn't pay that price. I got him at 199 for what it's worth. So this is a standalone league, so maybe it's a little bit different. Your mileage may vary, but just be aware that he's there for you if you feel like you're light on speed.
Yeah, that's a good point. The other guy in Colorado that we talk about, we seem like we talk about every year, is Garrett Hampson. Playing time maybe finally should be there this year. Yes, I've been a Garrett Hampson fader for many years. I just don't think he's a very good hitter, and I just hate getting guys anywhere that I don't think are very good hitters. But he had 17 stolen bases last year and 494 plate appearances. He did drop his K rate down a little bit. He's down to 24%. Still not great, but way better than he was in those other years. But you look a little deeper. I mean, his OBP was 289. Like, this is a guy that, if he doesn't figure it out pretty quick, I don't know if you can keep Hampson in the lineup. You just can't have a guy hitting, a 290 OBP guy who has no pop. That's a tough to throw in the lineup every day.
It's not good at baseball.
No.
I think that's the real takeaway there. They've got guys like Velotti, Montero. Not all of them can, displace him directly, but they might, and we know the Rockies aren't going to sign anybody significant, but what if they sign some veteran? I'm trying to think who.
Matt Kemp.
I was thinking but no, not that. But trying to think, just looking at the free agents and trying to see who is out there that might be worth a flyer on. That's like a middle infielder or something like that. I'll tell you here. I'll pull them up because at least some of the names. Because Fred and I were going through some names okay. Just to say that they're not totally tanking, that make it look good or something like that. Might not even be good.
How about Josh Harrison?
Bingo. Josh Harrison's a better hitter than Garrett Hampson.
Yeah.
It's not even close. Garrett Hampson's probably a better defender at this point in this stage of their career. Jonathan VR in Colorado, and I know he's on our list. Jonathan VR in Colorado would be so perfect.
You think that ADP would pop on that side?
Oh my gosh. It would CJ Crone would say, man, he's got some helium.
Yeah, no, you get the feeling they could totally sign some. There's a lot of names out there that are just kind of middle infielders that that's what the Rockies do. They usually sign outfielders to block other outfielders, but you could see them sign. There's even they could sign Jed Lowry, they could sign Chris Owings back.
Mm-hmm.
Hell, they could bring back Matt Carpenter. That kind of fits in their free agent profile. So there's a lot of it's going to be. I mean, we're kind of joking around right now, but the flurry of free agent signings is going to be absolutely breathtaking. It's going to be nuts to figure out who loses playing time, who gains playing time. Like draft champions leagues that are in the middle of drafting, it's going to be crazy as guys get signed and guys get blocked, guys free up for jobs that we didn't think we were going to have. It's going to be pretty wild.
It is, and I made the point on Twitter. I've made it on previous podcasts. If you want to do a slow draft, and especially anything more than an hour window between picks, do it now. Get it over with. In case they do come to an agreement in a week or so, even whatever percentage likelihood you put it in, you don't want to be stuck in a draft where people are waiting for the signings. You just don't.
You like to think most people won't, but there'll be people that will. There'll be people that put in their $250 or $400. They're like, I'm going to wait my 4 hours and see if Kenley Jansen signs in this window. That sort of thing. It's going to happen.
Yeah, and the worst spot to be in is 1 off the turn or 2 off the turn. You're late. You're at night. You make your pick. Yeah. And then someone waits 4 hours or 8 hours, like like in TGFBI, this happened before a couple of times, a couple of different years, I think. I make my pick at the end of a round and then wait. And then at the end of the night, they make one pick. And then
that is the worst.
It's
going to be scary to put in put in your auto pick. Say you're 3 picks away and you're on the West Coast and, the clock starts at 5. It's going to be scary to put an auto pick in knowing that there might be a bunch of news that breaks between, when you go to bed and when you wake up too.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is, it might teach you a lesson not to be caught up in the news cycle and just know the player, right? And and pick based on skills. It'll really emphasize, hey, use the capabilities of the NFBC system where you can set your auto for the specific round. I'll tell you, that saved my butt when I went to Tennessee for the Bengals-Titans game. I was in 3 different leagues, and I was just able to okay, this round I want a hitter, this round I want early, this, I want that, and it worked because for 4 hours I was unavailable, 4 hours plus.
And flying back and forth, that's another,
yes, exactly.
So that's like 12 hours over 4 days. I mean, that's a lot of time. Right. And the draft software on all these rooms has gotten so much better than it used to be.
Yes,
you mentioned Jonathan VR. He's unsigned at the moment. I think he takes a lot of heat from people in the fantasy world. Yeah, that unreal 2019 has not been great since, but still had 18 home runs and 14 stolen bases last year. Like you look up, you're like, oh, that's a better year than some of these guys that we're talking about. It's a better year than Garrett Hampson or probably better year than Raimel Tapia too with the 18 home runs. He hit 249. Strikes out too much for who he is. Does not hit the ball hard, but he's one of those guys that he gets on base and he usually goes.
And he usually signs with bad teams. So
he wants a green light when he signs.
Which hurts your counting stats, but it helps your stolen bases because you're like, go ahead, run. The Orioles are like the prime example of that. But
the dude went 24-40 with 111 runs in 2019. That is an insane fantasy season looking back.
Yeah, and then if you look back at some of his prime Brewery year too, I mean, this is a guy that has had some pretty crazy seasons. 62 stolen bases in 2016. Yeah.
With 19 home runs, too. That was not an empty power 62 stolen bases either. And he had 92 runs, 63 stolen or 63 RBIs, and he hit 285. Like that's a bonkers first round year right there.
Of course, then the next year he hit 241 with 11 homers and 23 stolen bases.
And he went into the 1-2 turn that year too. Like he was he was a top 20 pick. So yeah. Let's talk about some late speed darts here. You're in the back 10 rounds of your draft. You may not desperate need steals, but you're going to need some at some point. And I think that you want to get, if someone gets hurt, you're going to want a few guys that get some stolen bases on your bench or late, kind of your outfield 4, outfield 5, middle infield, those kind of guys. First guy I want to talk about is Rafael Ortega in Chicago. The Cubs are a weird team right now. We talked about a bunch last week with, Schwindel and Patrick Wisdom, where they're just kind of all the new guys, but they're not young guys. They're all, Ortega's 30, Wisdom and Schwindel are somewhere around there. But Ortega, as of now, could be leading off for the Cubs. If the season start now, who knows who they sign, but he would probably be the leadoff guy. He was good last year. Hit 291 in only 330 plate appearances, 11 home runs, 12 stolen bases. Nice little double there. 21% K rate, a decent 9% walk rate, so not horrible there. He is 30. I don't think we're looking at a lot of upside. But you look at 2019. He didn't play. 2020 is obviously in the minors. But 2019 in AAA with Atlanta, 21 home runs, 14 stolen bases at 285. This is someone like put up numbers in the minors. I know AAA, who knows how much you trust those numbers. We talked about that a bunch, but you talk about that year, you talk about last year in the majors. This is a guy that has been productive for back-to-back years, one in AAA, one in the majors.
Yep. Right. It's true that he had that good year, but he was gone for so long. I think people just distrust him. I've seen him slide a lot farther. I keep referring to the speakers draft. We're almost done with it, but it's all industry folks, right? And he slid and slid and slid. Finally, Ryan Bloomfield took him at round 26 in a 15 teamer, 26.11, 26.12. So he was like,
I love that.
80 slots over ADP. I mean, you're like, found money. And the funny thing is he hung around in that room like a stale fart, like for a long time. I mean, he was at the, you know how its default is based on ADP, and he was just, it was as if he was a hurt player. That was the funny thing.
Do you think that just because he's really boring and 30 and the Cubs are really bad? Like, where is that? I mean, obviously those are all bad things, but I don't know.
I think it's a room full of people that don't be looked at that look like squares either. I don't know.
And you're probably, you're probably trying to get your third closer there. You're probably trying to get the reliever in waiting. You're trying to get your starters. Like I noticed that you get drafts where outfielders just fall there because everybody's kind of filled up their outfield. Everybody's needing pitching. Everybody's trying to fill up other spots. It happens. There's always every draft has that one or two guys that do slide, but I don't think you can go that wrong taking Ortega. I mean, if he ends up bad and you just drop him, it's round 21, round 22, whatever it may be. You get someone gives me someone here with a shot that a decent batting average with a double capability. Leading off on any team, I'm taking that shot at that price.
This was the notorious Chas McCormick draft where I took him live on air last week. And I took McCormick right over Ortega as an example. That, in fact, it was about a round's worth, about 15 picks before Ortega went. So I could have taken Ortega there for whatever it's worth. I think there's a pretty good case. I mean, it's funny. The Cubs are just chock full of these guys.
They are. It's
wisdom.
It's crazy.
Yeah. I have. Well, the thing is, I think that's the other reason. I have Schwindel and Wisdom on this team already.
Right.
Do I want another boring veteran that might lose time? I don't know. Brennan Davis has to come up eventually. I don't know who loses the playing time when Davis gets the call, and I do think Davis gets the call this year.
It's a sneakily really bad lineup, though.
It is. Ian Happ is probably safe. Hayward is anything but safe. Frazier is anything but safe, but could have upside. I could see a scenario there. The question is, can Davis play center field? I think that's still up for debate. In fact, I think the debate has been ruled against him mostly there. So who knows? But then again, they're the Cubs. They may just say, we're going to roll you out in center field until you prove that you can't play there. And it's a smaller outfield.
Hard question to answer. Do you think this Cubs spend some money in this flurry of free agent signings? How do you feel? I mean, I know they talked a big game in like November, but obviously they signed Marcus Stroman, but that's kind of all they did.
They claimed Wayne Miley too. They took a found pitcher for free. I mean, all it cost them was money. I don't think they spend big because I think they're more than one big signing away from being a good team. Especially when you look at the rotation. Rotation is Stroman, Hendricks coming off a terrible year, Wade Miley could be good. Then Mills, Alzolay, Steele. I mean, it's like, they've got an unsettled bullpen. Wick and Hoyer are probably your first two chances to close, but I don't think they have one set closer. I think that's a team that has like 10 different guys get saves. There's a lot of ifs where things work out right. Sure, Nico Horner stays healthy and does finally contribute. Yeah. Okay, great. Wisdom is legit. Madrigal comes back all the way and it can hit right away. Schwindel is not smoke and mirrors. They got a lot of those before they work it out. So that's why I don't think they spend big. I don't think they're like in the Freddie Freeman sweepstakes or anything like that.
For a team that's not very good, though, they really don't have a lot of fun young guys, at least at the major league level at the moment.
No, their farm system just got crushed.
Wilson Contreras is 30, but still, it's just, I don't know.
I think they did a good job of kick-starting their farm system last year. I think their trades were actually pretty good trades, and they still may have to make another trade with Contreras. I don't know. We'll see.
A few more guys here, and then I want to talk about a few more offensive categories before we get out of here. But a few guys down here, some later darts. A guy that you and I have talked too much about, but you got to bring him up now. ADP's 384. We're way, way down the list now. Victor Robles, our friend in Washington. Question is he the starter? Is he batting ninth? I think it's been very clear that I've said it for years. I don't think he can hit. Hard hit was up a little bit, but it's at 27%. Still really, really, really the dregs of any kind of hard contact. He still has that 2019, stat line in his profile. He had 17 home runs and 28 stolen bases that year. He is fast. Can't hit. Barrel rate's 2.6%. At pick whatever it was the last couple of years, I was fully out. We talked about that a lot. But at pick 385, there's just zero risk down here, and you might fall into 20 stolen bases.
Yeah, and if you're in a league that doesn't have Derek Van Riper in it, you may get him there.
That's
true. Although DVR would not trade for him in our keeper league, he resisted there, but then he picked him in this. He goes, why am I like who I am?
The scar has to get too deep to keep picking him, right?
Yeah, I don't know. You could go to the Chris Liss, he owes me school there too. I'm not persuaded on him, but it's the same. Like there's zero risk and the playing time possibilities there. I don't like that they sent him down though. Yeah. It just but that might just been a temporary punitive thing, and they might be back at it again this year. There's plenty of playing time to be had. You want to talk about bad lineups? Washington is it.
Yeah, and they are, and it's just it probably have to be a team where I'm like, I really am in trouble with steals, so I got to take a shot on someone who has some real steals upside, but obviously there's not a lot of other upside there. But it have to be the right build. But I tend to sometimes get stuck a little bit low on stolen bases late in the draft, so I could see myself might be the first time ever, but I might press the draft button of Victor Robles this year at 385. If he's bad, or they sit him down or he hits ninth and he can't hit anymore, you just drop him. It's pretty easy. Whereas before, you're really investing in him before. So it's an interesting spot this year. A couple other guys late. Tyler Wade, as of this moment, is the starting shortstop for the LA Angels. I tend to think they're going to sign somebody or trade for somebody. I think that they have enough of a lineup there where I think they don't want to have a complete hole at shortstop. But if you look at the steamer projection, Tyler Wade is 17 stolen bases. He's picked 423. Another guy who can't hit is 13% hard hit rate last year, 1.1% barrel, cannot hit, and still struck out 20% of the time. You hate to see a guy who can't hit the ball hard and strikes out, but he's fast. He had 17 stolen bases last year. Another guy that probably had to be roster constructed. I've been pretty desperate for stolen base to take the shot, but there is a chance of some steals there.
There are, and I did draft him in one league. That same league again. You keep on going to the same league, but yeah, and I did. I'm not drafting that one with my chest out. I'm just like, yeah, I took him. But because I needed another shortstop. So yeah, I think that's definitely a concern. But he's an option. He's yet another guy. I mean, there's some ugly speed options but that's what they're late enough. It's okay. Yeah. You take Leody Taveras that late. You take Nick Gordon, there. You take Dylan Moore there. That's fine. You have to take somebody there, and you might, if they win a job and you find yourself light in bags elsewhere, you lose some job battles. Well, that's not a bad option there.
Some talk in the chat about Fab the first month, with all these unsigned free agents. I think that's a really good point for drafts that are going on right now, or there's some online chips going on. And the Fab is going to be wild that first week of the season. There's going to be a lot of names. I'm hoping that with my leagues that everybody will be signed before I draft. If I go to the main event in late March, I'm hoping that we obviously have a deal and guys have signed. So I'm hoping that isn't a big of an issue. But you're right, for drafts that are going on right now, that first Fab period is going to be a pretty wild one.
Yep, for sure.
You mentioned Dylan Moore. I think that the issue with Dylan Moore is he was really bad last year. Hit 181, but 12 home runs, 21 stolen bases. I was kind of surprised he still had 21 stolen bases. I thought he was so bad that there was nothing there, but he's probably a bench guy to start, which is obviously a pretty big problem. Strikeouts were up again. He dropped him in 2020 in that big year, and then back up in 2021. He was 29%. Hard hit rate crashed. Barrel rate dropped more than 5%. I guess the thing with Moore is one injury, and suddenly he's playing again every day. But I don't think he's I think you're a huge batting average risk, but anybody that steals 21 bases is probably worth rostering at this point.
Yeah, probably so. The Mariners, they're going to be interesting because they have expectations this year, finally, that they're going to be pretty good. Coming off.
Just missed it last year, right?
Just missed it last year, eliminated on the final day. They're not going to be as patient, perhaps, with some of these guys that are slower starters. Kelnick gets off to just as bad a start as he did last year. He's going to probably get sent down again. So that's going to be that's one path there. So Moore could be, and Moore was really good in 2020. He had his moments in 2019. He's not that good of a hitter though. That's the other thing. But again, it's commensurate with the cost.
Exactly. So I want to talk about a little bit of category management in terms of the offensive side. I think we'll save the pitching category management guys for next week.
Before you do that, though, can I mention a couple more of my guys that I think we should talk about?
Please do.
Lorenzo Cain, 368. Not flashy at all. Not up and coming, but and it's obvious. We always know it's health with him. Can he stay healthy? But
do you think he had 13 stolen bases last year in half a season? I was about to say, do you think he'll still run at 35? But he did last year.
Yeah, I think so. And then riskier pick, Bradley Zimmer with the Cleveland Guardians again. Not a great outfield again. But you can find other guys. But he to me he's like Grady Sizemore light in terms of everything.
If
Grady
Sizemore tries to strike out about twice as much. But
yeah, come on, let me work with my comp for just a second. Don't steal my sunshine. I think though that there's some batting average. There's a bigger risk to the downside on batting average, but there's some power speed possibilities. A team that might let their guys run a little bit more because I don't think this is going to be a very good offense. I don't think it's going to be a very good team. But they've had Zimmer in the pipeline for a while. They got other guys that are going to be coming up eventually. It's like now or never for Zimmer, and I think they're going to give him that rope to let him find out.
And the one thing I will say for Zimmer, I joke about the strikeout rate. It was really bad last year, but he is hitting the ball a lot harder. He's a 42.5% hard contact guy, 9.4% barrel. So he did improve there. And you want to talk about speed. The dude is really fast. He was 97th percentile sprint speed last year. There is no doubt if he can find a way to get on first base, which is obviously the issue, OBP is 325. He's fast enough where he had 15 stolen bases in 100 games last year. He could be a 20 stolen base guy pretty easily if he can figure out a way, maybe just strike out 5% less of the time, something like that.
For sure.
So let's jump into a few other categories. I want to talk about category manager for a second, but first a note from our sponsors at Thrive. Experience a new way to play daily fantasy sports on Thrive Fantasy. Thrive Fantasy is an exciting player prop fantasy contest. With Thrive Fantasy, you can eliminate the countless hours of research and focus only on the top-tier athletes that have the biggest impact on the game. Sign up for Thrive Fantasy today and receive a free 6-month Rotowire subscription. Here's how you claim your free Rotowire subscription. Number one, visit rotowire.com/thrive. Secondly, deposit a minimum of $10, receive a 100% deposit bonus up to $100. And then third, plan your first paid contest entry, receive a free 6-month Rotowire subscription. All on Thrive. So, Jeff, I want to talk about real quick. You get in a draft, you're through the first, I don't know how many rounds, 12 rounds or so in a 15 in a 12-teamer. You're like, I'm deficient in some offensive categories here. We're going to talk about pitching next week, but I want to talk about a few offensive categories. If you're deficient in home runs, you get to pick 200. There are some names here that I think are really interesting. I'm curious who you like more. I've got Adam Duvall here. His ADP is 242. Luke Voigt is 269. I think Duvall is pretty locked in for playing time. DH helps him even a little bit more. You can slide him there with the Braves. Adam Duvall was 38-113 last year. I think people forget just how much he contributed to the power stats. And then Luke Voigt, first base as of now, but there's talk they could sign Freddie Freeman. They could sign Anthony Rizzo back. They could trade for Matt Olson. There's a lot of ways where, Voigt's playing time goes away, but he's someone that the problem with him is he gets hurt a lot. But when he's been healthy the last couple of years, he's been a huge power guy too. Do you have a preference to these two guys, or how do you feel about these guys as someone that, round 15, you need some power real quick?
I kind of like them both.
Me too.
Duvall was free last year. I mean, free in the majors, not just in fantasy too.
Yeah, he was.
And then the Braves traded back for him after letting him walk and go to the Marlins. But people don't realize he was the major league RBI leader last year.
And you could win a lot of bar bets before Google. You could win a lot of bar bets with that because nobody's going that with the first 20 guesses.
Yeah, agreed. And obviously a lot of that is incumbent on the lineup, but I mean, he did a lot of that with Florida, Miami. I mean, it's not like that was a thriving lineup. Now he did do very well once he came back to the Braves and was huge in the playoffs. The Braves, they're interesting to me because not only is Freddie Freeman not back, we don't know when we're going to get Acuna back, but like Soler is unsigned. Jock is unsigned. Eddie Rosario is unsigned. All these guys.
Marcell Ozuna is a big who knows at the moment, right?
Right. Yeah. And then they're young guys. I don't know if they're going to be able to, if they're going to get that chance. They might be able. Who knows if they ever give a chance to Christian Pache again, or for that matter, who's the other kid I like? Drew Waters. If they ever give him a chance, it's a big unknown there with the Braves.
It's funny. You look at that lineup, you're like, how this team win the World Series, then you realize that Freeman, Soler, and Jock aren't in. As you look at lineups, that they're not in there, so that's a big difference. I usually don't care where guys sign. I really hope Freddie Freeman stays there. He just kind of seems to fit there. I hope he stays there, especially coming off the win of the World Series. But I like Soler too. Soler was huge in the World Series. Soler hits the ball a ton, hits the ball really hard. He's interesting to me wherever he ends up landing too.
Yeah, yeah, same here. I'm all over Soler.
And both these guys are talking about, Duvall, look a little deeper, 16% barrel rate. Luke Voit, 16% barrel rate. These are guys that legit power bats. Voit hit 263 and 277 in 2019 and 2020. Not a complete death in the batting average category there, at least before last year.
For sure. Soler for Rockies. Let's make it happen.
Oh my gosh, can you imagine? He hit some rockets in that place.
Soler for the Rangers. Give him another bat behind Seager and Semien.
I still wish if I had gone Soler instead of Rosario the last round of the NFBC playoff contest, I would have won too. And I almost did it. I was like, Rosario was so hot in an LCS. I'm like, there's no way. And then I forget what it was, but I think Soler didn't play the first game with no DH, and it kind of made my decision for me. I forget what it was. It was something like in that first lineup or with no DH in a couple of those games. I was like, I just can't do it. And I know Rosario was going to play. But Soler obviously had the better World Series. So close. But last guy I want to mention, home runs. We talked about the Guardians a bunch and kind of how they have some playing time open. Bobby Bradley's ADP is 410. That's, you're talking, these are the rounds where, everybody's milling around the main event. People aren't really paying attention anymore. Hit 16 home runs last year when he got called up in 279 plate appearances. Did hit 208. I think it's very clear the strikeouts are going to crush his batting average. Strikeout rate was 35%, but this is someone that can flat out hit the ball hard. He had a 16.8% barrel rate last year. In 2019 in AAA, had 33 home runs and only 450 plate appearances. If you need power and you have a decent batting average base buildup, or you need a power bat that you can put on the bench and maybe play him to 40% of the time for some power, and the batting average won't hurt you as much. I think Bradley's intriguing and has shown that he can hit home runs at the major league level already.
Agreed. I find him very interesting. He was once a pretty decent prospect.
He was.
It's funny, in this draft, Carlos Santana and Bradley went back-to-back picks, which I thought that was perfect symmetry there.
And I always loved Carlos Santana. Last year was just brutal.
He was underrated how good he was in, I think, 19 maybe, or was it 20? And then underrated how bad he was last year.
Yeah, it was 19 because he hit 281 with 34 bombs in 19, and then has hit about 210 since.
And he's been left for dead a couple times, then bounced back. He came up as a catcher. There's all sorts of wild stuff with him.
I think I might finally be fully off, and that's someone that I always grab late in drafts and just like, I'm gonna get some pop. Maybe it'll be a good batting average here. Maybe it won't be bad, but. Yeah, not so much. What about RBI? Obviously, these guys kind of work for RBI also, but you mentioned Nathaniel Lowe earlier. His ADP is about 230. Is this someone that had a nice strikeout drop last year down to 25%? Still not a great number, but better than it was. Should have a lot of RBI opportunities, though. Obviously, we're talking about categories here. Runs and RBIs are kind of hard to figure out sometimes because it's just, it's tough to figure out, what situation is going to be, where lineup's going to be. But he's someone that can be hitting fifth behind Semien, Seager, and Adolis Garcia. Like, that should be a lot of opportunities. It's hard to predict RBIs, but that's a pretty good spot.
The StatCast stuff seems to like him.
Yeah.
They don't like, they're a machine. They're just numbers, so they don't like. But you know what I'm saying. His StatCast metrics are good.
Yeah.
Let's rephrase
He's
that.
45% hard hit rate last year. Barrel a little bit under 10%. I like the strikeout drop. He threw in 8 stolen bases last year. I was a little surprised when I saw that too. You're going to give me give me 75 RBIs with 20 home runs and 8 steals. That works with the ADP, I think.
However, and this is a big however.
I like
our outlook. Our outlook mentions this. He could become Eric Hosmer 2.0 in the ground ball sense. He in September it was like a 63% ground ball rate. Oof. Last 2 months or second half is 59.4. Total was 55%. That's a lot of ground balls. Hard to hit ground balls out of the park, I'm told.
Yeah, it's 54.5% on the season, so that is rough. You're gonna 27% fly ball rate's gonna, like you said, gonna be tough to hit a lot of home runs. So maybe not for home runs, but I still think the RBIs work with those guys hitting in front of him. But yeah, if he's not hitting for any pop, he might get moved down there a little bit. What about batting average? Batting average is always a tough category to find late. Every time I look at Michael Brantley, I'm surprised by his ADP, and I think I have it wrong. And his ADP is still 258. I would take Michael Brantley there every single day. I think he'll move up a little bit as we get into later drafts. But, I mean, he's got hit 299 or higher the last 5 years. We're not talking 265 or higher. We're talking 299 or higher.
Mm-hmm.
Last year he hit 311, only 8 home runs. I get I get what you're giving up here, and it has to fit your team build. But 508 plate appearances of 311 has a lot of value. He hits second for this lineup. He's going to score some runs. Hard hit rate was a career high last year, 43%. Strikeout rate was down to 10.5%, which is a bonkers number in this day and age in baseball. But I just think you have to have the right build. You're not going to get stolen base out of him anymore. That's long gone. You're not getting home runs, but batting average and runs at this price, I think, come pretty nicely.
Yeah, he pairs well with like Stanton or something like that. Just realize too, the other thing that's kind of working against him is he's getting replaced in the field a few times here and there now too, to the point where Jordan Alvarez qualified in the outfield.
Yep.
And he only played 100, and Brantley only played 121 games. The thing is, he's that stable stock. There's not a whole lot of upside left, but what he does very well. I think people want upside, chasing upside, and for good reason.
Yeah, for sure. I think there's so many guys in like the 6th to 12th round. Like, I can get a lot of pop here, but I'm worried about the batting average. He just, like you said, he pairs nicely with so many of those guys. I just think if you give me one of my 5 outfield spots where I realize I'm giving up some home runs, I'm hoping maybe I get 12 to 14, but you're going to hit 300. I think I can work around that and figure everything the rest out. If you're going to give me all those plate appearances at 300.
Yeah, you're also giving up RBI with him. He's had one good RBI year since 2015. He had in 2019 Happy Fun Ball year. He went 22 and 90. I mean that's phenomenal if you're getting that from Brantley. But last year was 8 and 47.
Yeah, no, last year was definitely rough power. He had 68 runs scored, which is pretty good in 121 games. I think if it's obviously
it's a 2-category player all of a sudden. He's just averaging runs then all of a sudden.
Yep.
And it's not a guy you can start every week suddenly too. That's also a problem. Universal DH will help just for those whatever interleague games that they have. They don't have to worry about that.
Yeah.
So that gives them a few extra games. I wonder, if he starts getting platooned a little bit more, something like that happens. Although I'm trying to look to see how bad his lefty righty splits are.
It was bad. It was bad.
It was really bad.
Yeah, he had 220 against lefties last year.
575 OPS against lefties and 180 plate appearances. Okay, I'm less interested now because that's the type of guy that needs to get a replacement, and it's a pretty stark difference. You have to look and see that schedule. Now, what you might want to do too is start analyzing. This is where you have to start digging a little bit deeper. Okay, how many lefties are in the division? How many? And you have to kind of go. Okay, the Mariners have this. You start going through.
The A's have one.
Yeah, for now. I'm sorry. Was that too soon?
You mean because we're going to add Clayton Kershaw?
Yes, exactly. That's right.
So we'll have 2 really quickly. That's a good point.
Exactly. The only good starting pitcher on the free agent market, by the way. It's really bad.
Carlos Rodon?
Yeah, okay, 2. And he's also lefty.
It's really kind of it though. It goes off a cliff fast.
And that's the thing is the good ones have like this really awful string attached. Their elbow is attached by a string or shoulder, as the case may be with Rodon.
Yeah, it's funny because everybody's like, there's going to be all these free agent signings. There's going to be, but you're right. The starting pitcher ones are not very sexy or interesting.
Right. So we might see trades instead.
That's true.
This is why you hear about Sonny Gray and Luis Castillo in trade talks, trade rumors.
Or Sean Manaea, Chris Bassett, and Frankie Montas. Because the A's do have one thing. It's a little bit of starting pitching depth that people would like.
Yep.
Oh, I'd like Sonny Gray. I like Sonny Gray anyway, but yeah, if he were to end up on a good contending team.
Well, we know he's not going to the Yankees. We know that.
I don't think the Mets are in the picture either. I think he's avoiding New York completely.
Correct.
Or Boston or any place with like a huge.
In so much that he has choice in this, yes.
That's true too. The other batting average guy, we kind of mentioned him a little bit earlier. Nick Madrigal is someone that I have trouble figuring out. Like we talk about Brantley with batting average and nothing else. Like this is the extreme Brantley. Madrigal had 2 home runs and 1 steal last year in 250 plate appearances. I kind of thought he would be a batting average, steals, and runs kind of guy. It has not worked out that way so far. You are really hoping he hits 300 because if he doesn't, you are beyond empty here. 22.8% hard hit rate, 1.1% barrel. There's no sort of loud content coming from this bat. You're not getting any RBIs. You're not getting any home runs. Do you think he finds a way to steal? He stole in the minors. He had 31 stolen bases and actually 35 in 2019 in across
3 different levels. Yeah.
He had 250 plate appearances last year and he ran 3 times. He was 1 for 3. Maybe that was Chicago and there's no reason to run because they got these big boppers and then he's got caught twice and then run again. I think he'd probably run more with the Cubs, but because concerning he has 3 stolen bases in his major league career.
I've always thought White Sox kind of underperform in stolen bases a little
Yeah.
bit. And I don't know if that's a managerial thing because it's 2 different managers over the last couple of years. I don't see TLR as a guy that's anti-stolen base necessarily. So I don't know. I think there's a reasonable case to get him at this price at the very least. So what was the ADP? Is like what, 290? Yeah.
293,
so, yeah. So sure. I can see it. Again, you're definitely giving up 2 categories here.
Yeah.
I mean, and not just giving up, but really giving up 2 categories.
Yeah, like almost. I mean, you're going to get 2 home runs. You're going to get 25 RBIs. I mean, you pretty much are dead zeros there. I think he's got to steal 12 to 15 bases to work.
Yeah, and he might have a green light. Again, this is where the lockout really sucks, though, because at least we'd have a health update on him right now.
Yep.
You know, how'd it go in recovering from it? I like that he got it taken care of. I hate that it's a hamstring thing because obviously if it ever recurs, he's not running at all. And so that's the thing you have to worry about. I mean, it was a nasty tear.
And we talk about the flurry of free agent signings, the flurry of injury news, those first like 2 days of spring training, summer training, whatever you're calling it now. Those are going to be wild too. Like there's going to be guys moving up in that ADP based on injury news. I mean, all these pitchers, they're coming back from injury. Clevenger and Justin Verlander, like their first outing, if they're throwing 96 versus throwing 88, are going to be just massive differences too.
Not to mention all the surprise TGSs that we're going to get and things like that.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm sure you've got guys that got hurt. And the news flurry is going to be almost as great as the free agent flurry. So we've got a little bit long here, but quick runs scored. Run scored is a tough category if you get behind. As you scroll through like any projection system or like last year's stats with runs scored, all the guys at the top of the runs leaderboard are all the elite players. It's all the studs, all the guys that have been gone for 20 rounds. The first guy that's kind of interesting to me, though, is Brandon Nimmo in New York. His ADP is 285, hit 292 last year, only 8 home runs, 5 stolen bases, but always seems to get hurt. But this is a guy back-to-back years with an OBP over 400. We talked about all these guys down here like, oh, their OBP is 325. Can they stick? This guy's OBP is over 400. Makes sense for him to hit leadoff. If you're a smart team, you had him hit leadoff. And you go Starling Marte, Francisco Lindor, Pete Alonso behind him. Like that is a lot of runs if Nimmo can get on base. Nice bump in his hard contact up to 41%. So maybe showed a little improvement as a hitter. K rate's 20%. I think we're fine there in this day and age of baseball. But he's someone that just has to stay in the field. But I think you're looking at a guy that really could help you in runs scored if that's the case.
I agree. I'd agree with that. I got him in a lot of places last year. Didn't really work out very well, but I think that you're on track. It's you search for some undervalued ADP. I mean OBP is the pathway to getting some runs because almost always runs are necessarily correlated with batting average. So that's good when if you go with the batting average guys, you're usually going to get the runs too. We mentioned some exceptions here and there, but batting average usually equals on base. So with a few,
he hit 292 and 280 the last couple of years. So that your point there definitely stands pretty well.
Yeah. So I mean that's what you're looking for. It's hard to get standalone runs for sure. I mean, Mark Canha had a first half that was crazy like that. We've talked about that before. He's actually probably undervalued just a smidge. Although I don't like the move to New York, but that lineup is actually like it's full of guys. I don't want to use chock full again. I already used that phrase. So I'm gonna try to find another one. It's just brimming with undervalued hitters, guys, or bounce back hitters, if you will.
Although I think we said last year they might need like universal double DH for them to get everybody in because they have so many guys that can't play defense but can hit. It's a weird National League build.
They might need universal faith healer too to just cure all their woes. But
could be true also.
Yeah, cash usually works.
It does, and Canha's weird. Like I thought he was a pretty decent outfield. You look at some of the, like defensive WAR metrics, and they do not agree with that at all. He was not very good. So I don't know. Another guy out there that maybe running around like Jeff McNeil is never a great thing.
Yeah. Can I throw one other name? It's kind of cheating.
Please do. No, cheat away.
197 ADP, but Yuli Gurriel is a guy I feel like it's underappreciated. Average in runs. He's not a big bopper, but he's pretty much always there in those 2 categories. He's kind of the right-handed Brantley in a way.
Except he was 80-80 in runs and RBIs last year.
Yeah.
So we talk about some of the deficiencies with Brantley and some of these other guys. Like it's a good point because 83 runs and 81 RBIs, like he didn't hurt you anywhere except for stolen bases last year.
Yeah. If you're one of those never early first base types, Yuli Gurriel is your wheelhouse.
You look at it, he's hit over 291 for the last 5 years. Like that is a really good batting average guy, and hit 31 home runs in 2019. I think he's a very much a happy fun ball guy that year. But you give me 15 home runs like last year, and he hit 320 last year. Like he's always someone in that like 13th, 14th round. I'm like, all right, I'll just take Gurriel because he's sitting there and nobody wants to do it. And it almost always works out.
Yep.
Good call right there. So, we'll definitely hit the pitching ones. Next week. We'll talk about some, later pitchers that can help you in certain categories. But thanks everybody for listening to the Rotowire Fantasy Baseball Podcast, sponsored by WynnBET. We appreciate everybody listening or watching all season long. If you want to follow Jeff on Twitter, he's at Jeff_Erickson. I am at Scott Jenstad. We'll certainly answer questions and talk baseball there. Hopefully we have some positive baseball chatter this week. I have my first glint of a little bit of optimism. In fact, I'm meeting every day. Hopefully we get some good news. I'm going to try not to get down on the bad news because there's going to be some of that for sure too.
Right on. Knock on wood. Just hope there's some productive negotiations face to face and they last longer than 15 minutes. Agreed
there. Are you in the Raz Slam? I think it starts this week.
I am in Raz Slam. I think we might have gotten draft order already. I didn't get a chance to check that email, but I know it starts Tuesday. So
it's like a points cut line format, right?
It is.
Okay.
It is.
Good. Well, beautiful. So we'll be doing a little drafting there this week. So thanks everybody for listening. We really appreciate that. If you could please rate and review the podcast, it helps out a lot. Also, other than that, hope everybody has a fantastic week. We'll be back at you next Sunday night. Take care.